House of the Dragon Season 2 just ended, and I have some thoughts. To somewhat explain my feelings with this season, I find myself in a similar situation when I watched Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 1. Hear me out. Dune Part 1 to me is a great movie, but a lot of the interesting and incredible moments kind of happen in the first half of the movie. There's a lot of pieces that were moving, a lot of conflicts that were emerging, and all of it culminates in an intense action set piece halfway through the movie. It felt climactic because, well, it is climactic. It serves as the climax for the growing conflict that was set up from the very beginning. And because of this, the rest of the movie kinda became set up for Dune Part 2. There are some action here and there, but nothing as grand or big as the one before it. There's obviously a climax, but it doesn't feel like your usual climax in a sci-fi epic. Now don't get it twisted, I love Dune Part 1. I think it's an incredible movie, but I would be lying if I say that the second half didn't meander a lot. Were there important moments during these times? Yes, absolutely. But a part of me was struggling to focus during that second half. I say all of this because 1, I don't really feel that way anymore about the second half of Dune after rewatching it and having a better time now knowing what to expect. But 2, that is how I feel with House of the Dragon Season 2. I'm gonna briefly talk about Season 1 in that I really enjoyed it. The constant time jumps make it seem faster paced than it actually is, but it also means that there's going to be at least one major event within each episode, and that's what makes Season 1 exciting to me. I say this because the common criticism that I've seen for Season 2 is that, well, not much is really happening. Some are saying that it's boring, a letdown, and overall not as good as Season 1. And I get where these people are coming from. I agree that Season 2's pacing is definitely a lot slower than Season 1, especially with Daemon's Harrenhal adventures. We'll get to that. But I kinda disagree on the boring part, or the lack of action the characters are showing. I'm not saying they executed all of their ideas perfectly, but I don't think this season was bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think we can all agree that the first half of the season is the best part of Season 2. I think the first episode started the season wonderfully in that it sets the tone right. The realm is divided, the great houses are unsure who to follow between Aegon and Rhaenyra, and tensions are kind of rising following what happened at the end of Season 1. A lot of rash and terrible decisions later, and everything is fucked for both sides by the end of Episode 4. Which was an incredible episode, by the way, probably my favorite of the season. But what makes the first half work so much for me is absolutely Aegon's character. See, here's the thing. I really like Aegon as a character. Maybe more than Rhaenyra. Even though I'm Team Black, lower your pitchforks, but Aegon's entire storyline so far has been the most interesting for me to follow. Because Aegon is this child who, let's be real here, was never really fit to rule. And he knows this. A lot of his scenes in Season 1 and Season 2 suggest that he never really wanted to be king, but since he was forced upon it by his family, now he has this unwanted responsibility that he has to uphold. I see some people dislike Aegon for being an irresponsible child, but to me, I feel pity given that he never wanted it to begin with. Like, he tried to be a nice king and was criticized for being too kind, and he decided to be more strict and was again criticized for being too cruel. Now, I'm not saying what he's done is justified, but he's trying, man. Give him a break. And to me, having him struggle in the position as a king is a great counterbalance to Rhaenyra struggling to be in the position of a queen. Which is why during the second half of the season, where Aegon is sort of cast aside in screen time for reasons I will not spoil, it felt like something's missing to spice up the dynamic of the story here. Because to me, the two factions, the Greens and the Blacks, are at their best when all of their players are bouncing off between one another. And not in a sexual manner, by the way. I just realized what I said could also mean something else given the incestuous world of the Targaryens. So when even one of them goes missing, it becomes less dynamic. Like Otto Hightower, for example. Otto's screen presence gives so much command and respect in that he's always this higher voice of order. So when he's also out of the picture in the second half, you don't really get that same level of presence from the other characters. And look, I understand the reason why certain character spotlights were taken away, but I do think that that's the reason the second half may not be as engaging as the first half. And then there's Damon. Alright, listen. I like Damon's side plot of Harrenhal. Not necessarily the placement of these sequences. I think it would have worked better if all of it was focused into a single episode though. I know that's kind of impossible given the structure of the show, but I love how weird they went with some of the dream sequence. Are these dream sequences? Hallucinations? Visions? I don't know, dream sequences. Damon's personal conflict is that he has main character syndrome, and his entire storyline in Harrenhal is him dealing with the fact that he's not the main character. He's not the king, and probably never will, unless he, of course, disrupts the order of things. And how Damon copes with this fact and his own attempts to change his fate, while also slowly understanding the consequences of that change, makes his character arc pretty compelling to me. Having said that, it does get tiresome by the 4th or 5th time we cut to Daemon sleeping in his bed, while the rest of Westeros is literally burning. But I do think his character arc throughout the season was good enough for me to feel somewhat satisfied by its conclusion in the finale. I don't know how others are gonna feel about it. I can see some people thinking that his conclusion was either convenient or abrupt, but I personally liked it because it's a sign of Daemon's growth. Which then leads us to Rhaenyra and the rest of the season. So, the thing about Rhaenyra this season is that she's acting a lot more cautious, right? And her inaction caused many in her council to grow restless and demands she takes action, or they'll do it themselves. Which I guess is realistic given that a lot of people online are also restless in the lack of action this season. And I get it. After episode 4 and the build-up for another Clash of Dragons, only for the finale to not end on another action set piece and is instead more set up for the next season, it's understandable why many were let down. But to say nothing happened in those final 4 episodes is also kind of insane. Like, there's a lot of setup, yes, but these are all still important moments in my opinion. They're not these high, intensive scenes or anything shocking, but they are key moments that sort of define a character's position in the show. Larys and Aegon's growing relationship, Lord Corlys and the other 2 brothers, Jacaerys and his own struggle of being the heir, the growing resentment of the people, Aemon... I haven't talked about Aemon. Aemon is fantastic this season. I still think Aegon's more interesting than Aemon as a character, but Aemon definitely steals whatever scene he's in, including this section of the video. What was I talking about again? Rhaenyra. Yeah, I like her this season. I think she's still an interesting and likable enough character to follow, but I would be lying if I say that she's my favorite this season. At least compared to some of the other characters this season, despite this being her war, there isn't much internal conflict with her character. Like, I already talked about Aegon and Daemon having these internal issues and that they're unsure of their place in the world, but Rhaenyra, as far as I know, she's pretty content with where she is. Most of her problems is that some of her council don't really see eye to eye with her, like her son Jace for example, but to me they're just not as compelling as other conflicts within this season. Like her conflict with Daemon at the start of the season isn't necessarily for her to resolve, it's Daemon's. Having said that, I think my favorite character moment for Rhaenyra is in the final episode. I've already tiptoed a bit with spoilers in this video, so I won't say much, but there is a conversation near the very end of season 2 that I really love between Rhaenyra and one other character. Because to me, that conversation and the weight of it showcases what is Rhaenyra's actual internal conflict, in that she could no longer avoid conflict, and whatever it is she must do in order to sit on the Iron Throne, she must make sacrifices, whether if it's innocence or close ones. Seeing other people's opinions on this finale and this scene in particular, it is pretty divisive, but personally I thought it was a powerful moment and I find it to be a rather fitting way to end this season. Talking technical stuffs before I end this review, but the visuals this season were incredible. The cinematography and some of the shots on display were beautiful to look at, with some subtle symbolism scattered here and there. And the VFX on those dragons, man! I haven't talked about the dragons yet. They're great. They're great. I love the dragons. The dragons are great. I love the relationship between the dragon and the dragon riders this season. Like, this bond between them was greatly emphasized, and the dragons themselves feel more like characters instead of just giant animals. And it makes for some of the dragon on dragon action a lot more intense because I also want the dragons to live. So yeah, Dragon Scene's good. And of course, it's not Game of Thrones without Ramin Djawadi and his incredible score. I think he outdid himself when it comes to House of the Dragon. Season 1 had some banger music, but I think he popped off with Season 2. And those were my thoughts on House of the Dragon Season 2. Was it a perfect season? No. Did I think it was a good season? Yeah, for the most part. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you have seen House of the Dragon Season 2. Thank you all for watching. Take care, everybody, and have a nice day.